Tonight's shiur, as always, Lilu Nishma Ravi Mori Dov Ber Meir Ben Reuven Halevi Imi Merati Rachel Bat Harav Michael, and also in memory of Cynthia Barmore, who passed away this week. Family is sitting Shiva, longtime member of the shul, and Hadassah and Ezra and every other organization in Modi'in that has Anglos in it, probably, and probably a few others that I don't even know about, but. Okay, so this week we're going to talk about parshat Vayakhel, which basically we can sum up in one very simple sentence: the building and construction of the Mishkan. That's what the parsha talks about. How Moshe gathers all of Bnei Yisrael, tells them they have to make the contributions, they have to build the Mishkan, and interestingly enough, the parsha almost seems to be a verbatim, in many instances, a verbatim repetition of parshat Truma, where we are given where Hashem is giving Moshe the instructions for building the Mishkan. And really what's happening in this week is we're saying that's what happened. That's exactly how it happened. So I wanted to focus today on not the building itself, but the people involved in the building, who were involved in the construction. And we're going to specifically see two individuals who are going to be singled out. And that's primarily what we're going to be discussing tonight. So let's go to the sources. We are going to start with chapter 35, chapter Lamed Hey 35, verse 30, verse Lamed. But actually, in reality, we're going to see again, very just like I just said, that a large segment of the parasha is almost verbatim from the instructions in Truma. Moshe is given the instructions as to who the people who are going to be involved in the building, not in Truma, but in Ki Tisa, in last week's parsha. And we're going to see a very, very strong parallel between these two parashot, Vayakhel and Ki Tisa. You can see them on the screen. We've got the Vayakhel on the right. Ki Tisa is on the left. And in the Ki Tisa, it's Hashem speaking to Moshe. He's saying, Re'eh si karati v'shem. I, Hashem, have singled out by name this individual by the name of Betzalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, who comes from the tribe of Yehudah. Moshe comes to the children of Israel in Vayakhel and says, Vayomer Moshe b'nei Yisrael. Moshe says to the children of Israel, Re'u, see, kara Hashem b'shem, that Hashem is singled out. So obviously, same exact language. And what is it? Betzalel ben Uri ben Hur l'matei Yehudah. Interestingly enough, both times he is not just called Betzalel ben Uri, he's ben Uri ben Hur. We rarely have in the Torah people identified by their parent and grandparent. That's not the norm. The norm is you're identified as somebody, the son of somebody else. That's it. You don't generally get a 3-generation introduction. Commentaries are going to speak about that a little bit. But again, if we look through what follows, it seems, as I said, almost verbatim. Elohim, I have filled him with the spirit of Hashem, with 4 different areas: b'chachma, wisdom; tfuna, understanding; da, knowledge; uv'chol malacha, and involvement in malacha. Again, we've as we are familiar from the laws of Shabbos, malacha, which is what is permitted. If you ask 99 people out of 100 will say, what's forbidden on Shabbos? Work. You can't work on Shabbat. Wrong. You can't do creative activity on Shabbat. That is what malacha is. Creating. Taking things that God has left us and fashioning them into something new. Whether that something new is taking 2 pieces of wood and building a structure, or it's taking dough and making it into flour. All of those things are taking something and shaping it. That's what malacha is. Here, primarily, we're talking about that type of malacha that is needed for construction of building, of furniture, of garments, and curtains and hangings. That's what we're going to be finding. Okay. Similarly, lachshov machshavot, to think about how. In other words, it's not just knowing how to do it. Actually, it's being able to plan out the whole thing. And similarly, lasot bazav hakesem nechoshet. He was a master metalsmith. Gold, silver, and copper, or brass, whichever way you want to translate nechoshet. Similarly, b'charoshet even, he is able to know about stone cutting, lamalot, in order to fill them in, and eights, and constructing with wood. So he was not only a smith, he was also a carpenter, he was also a planner, an architect, and a designer, so that he could visualize how the whole structure would look, so that when the pieces are all made, they fit together properly. Lasot b'chol. Now here we have a very interesting word, interesting change between the kitisa side. It just says lasot b'chol malacha, whereas in our parshat it says kol melechet machshevet. Okay, what's the difference between malacha and melechet machshevet? Very simply, melechet machshevet, which is what is prohibited on Shabbat, means that I intend to do. It's the work by, it's creativity by design, not creativity by accident, that it just happened to happen, which plays an interesting role when if you study the laws of Shabbat, has to be a melechet machshevet. Now then we get to his deputy, where Hashem is talking to Moshe, says, "Vanihine natati," behold, I have given with him et Ohaliav ben Achisamach l'matei done. Notice again, he's introduced the normal way. No grandfather. Ohaliav, the son of Achisamach from the tribe. Ubelev kol chacham lev, and in the heart of every wise at heart, nashati chachma, I have given wisdom. Yasu et kol asher tziviticha, and they will able to make all that I have commanded you. That's what Hashem tells Moshe. But when Moshe is telling the people, he doesn't mention these kol chacham lev. He just says ulaha wrote natan belibo. Not only was Betzalel able to do all of this stuff on his own, he was also a great teacher. Ulaha wrote. He was able to teach people how to do it, how to make things, how to make it work. But not just he, who? The Ohaliav ben Achisamach l'matei dan, and Ohaliav ben Achisamach l'matei dan. So I really want to focus tonight on these two individuals, Betzalel and Ohaliav, and how they are perceived by the commentaries. But before we do that, we very simply start with, I just want you to understand that these are the only three parashiot, Kitisa, Vayakhel, and once in Pekudei, where these two individuals are mentioned in the entire Torah. And Ohaliav is never mentioned again in anywhere in Tanakh. Betzalel is mentioned once incidentally in Divrei Hayamim as the one who made the ark, and once in his genealogy. That's it. These two individuals never appear as characters again outside of these chapters that deal with the Mishkan. And here, and the only time they appear, by the way, in Parshat Pekudei is, the only time that they don't appear in tandem, we're going to see in a minute. You'll notice every time they appear together. So in chapter 36, it says, V'asah Betzalel v'Ohaliav. Interesting that we have a singular verb here, v'asah, and he made, but it said lists not only Betzalel, Ohaliav. There we get back to these Chacham Lev. Each Chacham Lev suddenly appear again. So they're all the ones who are making. They make l'chol asher tzivo Hashem. They make everything. Vayikra Moshe calls El Betzalel via Ohaliav. So we see whenever they're mentioned, they're joined at the hip, both in Kitisa and Vayakhel, as well as we're going to see later on once in Pekudei at the end of this list. But again, every time Betzalel is mentioned, Ohaliav is mentioned, except for once, which we're going to get to right here. When it comes to making the ark, and we're going to see the commentators are going to have something to say about this. Vayas Betzalel et Haaron atzei shitim. The one who makes the ark is not Betzalel and Ohaliav. There's no Chacham Lev. Betzalel himself makes the ark, period. And then it gives the dimensions, etc., and tells us all about the ark the rest of the way. And as I said, the only other time they mentioned is in Parashat Pekudei, where it tells us again, very similarly, Betzalel ben Uri ben Chur l'matei Yehuda asa et kol asher tziva Hashem et Moshe. Betzalel made all the things that Hashem commanded Moshe. Everything that Hashem commanded Moshe to make for the Mishkan, for the Kelim, for everything, Betzalel did it. And who was there with him? Right next to him, Vito, immediately with him, was Ohaliav ben Achisamach l'matei dan. Again, remember, interestingly enough, Betzalel ben Uri ben Chur, Ohaliav ben Achisamach. Same thing. Betzalel always gets his father and grandfather, gets his tribe. Ohaliav just gets his father and his tribe. Now, but it seems from here that if I read these two psukim here in Pekudei, it seems that Betzalel was the general overseer, in addition to, so he made the ark himself. But Ohaliav seems to be the second in command, but specifically also he was Charash v'Choshev. He was involved in the carpentry and the planning, but not so much in the metalwork, it seems. He was the one who was the master weaver, I guess stitcher, whatever, everything that's involved in the fabrics. That seems that Ohaliav took the lead in. He was the, even though Betzalel is the overall, it seems Betzalel was more involved in the metalwork and the woodwork. Ohaliav is also involved in the woodwork, but also in the fabric work. So that we have seems to be a division of structure here, at least in the construction of the Mishkan and all that was involved in it. But other than that, it seems that the two of them are joined at the hip and they work this project together. They're co-project managers, it seems, even though Betzalel seems to be a notch ahead, above. Okay. Balaturin very simply says, why does Moshe, if Hashem appointed them, why does Moshe have to tell the Jewish people that they've been appointed? Because Balaturin quotes the Gemara in Brachot, she'ein mamidim parnes ala tzibur ela midatam. We do not appoint somebody to a communal post without the consent of the community. Person is not allowed to usurp and just say, I'm going to do this job. You want to be in charge of a community, you have to have the community's consent. Gemara in Brachot. And that's why Moshe, even though Hashem has appointed them, Moshe goes to the children and says, okay with you guys. And we'll see as the parshat will elaborate on this a little bit more. So we're going to focus on a few parshanim here. That Zekanim starts with the following. Re'u karashem. What does it mean? Re'u karashem. See that Hashem is the one who's appointed them. Moshe tells the Jewish people, "I'm not picking them. Don't. I didn't pick these two guys. Hashem picked them." Why? Why does he have to say that? What does it make? Who picked them? Right? The people either they're acceptable or they're not acceptable. Mahu re'u. Why does he have to say re'u? See. Lefi, the reason is Kisha Amar Moshe Yisrael. When Moshe comes to the Jewish people and says, Betzalel Yaseh Mishkan, that Betzalel will be the one who is in charge of making Mishkan, Hayu Yisrael Marananim Acharei Moshe. Everybody starts complaining, hey, what do you think? People are going to take everything right away? No, of course it's got to be a complaint. What was the complaint? Nepotism. Why? Who is Betzalel ben Uri ben Hur? Well, Medrashim are going to tell us that Hur is his son. Okay, Betzalel is his Moshe's great grandnephew. Okay, so again, back to nepotism, the old nepotism. That's why Moshe introduces him. He says, "Amar la Moshe, de'u u're'u." You must know, he lo midati ani oseh. I didn't pick him. He was chosen by Hashem. The Af Moshe Atzmo, even Moshe himself, when Hashem told him, Bishash Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Amalekhet HaMishkan, the Asita, when Hashem is giving Moshe all the commands in Parshat Truma, everything begins with the Asita, you should make. Moshe assumed, okay, that's going to be my job for next, whatever long it takes. I'm going to have to make all this stuff. No. You're not going to be the one who's going to have all this work on their shoulders. The righteous one who was killed trying to prevent the sin of the golden calf, Hainu Chur, is obviously Chur. Yavo ben Bino, his grandson, the Ya'asenu. He will make all of the things in the Mishkan. Why? What's the connection between the golden calf and the Mishkan? Lefi shamishkan kapara al oso masa. Because the Mishkan is coming, according to Zekanim, Mishkan is coming as a kapara for the Chet HaEgel. Therefore, somebody who was trying to prevent Chet HaEgel, his merit will stand, and his grandson, therefore, is the one who's going to be in charge of making the Mishkan. And that's why Hashem says, I want you to see and understand why Betzalel is being chosen. Now the Rosh, I'm going to go very quickly to the Rosh because the Rosh basically quotes the same exact thing that the Bali Tosfot says, but he adds one line at the end that I wanted to go to, and that's highlighted in yellow here. It's exactly the same word for word what the Zekanim has up until we get to the yellow here. The Rosh adds the following. Moshe, remember, Hashem is telling Moshe why that I picked Betzalel for this job because of Hur, but Ukishenivra ha'olam, when the world was created, Nivra bechachma ubitfuna uvedat. That there are three things that Hashem tells Moshe that he is imbued Betzalel with are chachma, tvuna, and dat. Why those three attributes? Because those are the three attributes that Hashem used in creating the world. Bechachma shenemar bechachma yasad aretz. That the world is established, foundation of the world is in chachma. Ubitfuna shenemar konein shamayim bitfuna. The shamayim is again established through tivuna, through understanding. Bedat shenemar bedato tahomot nikbeu. That the tahomot, the depths, were again established. This word kovea, were established through dat. So these three attributes that Hashem is mentioning exist in Betzalel are all the attributes, things that Hashem needed to create the world. Now again, if we go back to the whole concept of the Mishkan being related to Shabbat, we understand that the reason the Mishkan is related to Shabbat is because the Mishkan is supposed to be our trying to or emulating in some way Hashem's creation of the world. That's why we have this whole connection between Malachas of Shabbat and the Malachas of the Mishkan. We have many similarities, which I don't want to go, I'm not going into that because I really want to focus on this, but we find that lots of comparisons in wording and phraseology between the creation of the Mishkan, the building of the Mishkan, the work of the Mishkan, and Hashem's creation of the world. Because again, there are parallels. We are created, just like Hashem creates the world for us, we are Kaviyachol creating this Mishkan for Hashem. So we have this relationship here to building Kaviyachol a home for Hashem, and we do it through the same tools that Hashem used to create the world for us. Okay. Klei Akar is now going to try to give us an understanding of what is all this thing? Why do we have such emphasis on the names and the genealogy here? Amar Moshe. Re'u kara Hashem, say Moshe says, Re'u, you have to see. Re'u, see, the Tzedaktiku b'shmotam. If you will look and analyze the names, Ki kara Hashem b'shem Betzalel, that Hashem is calling the name of Betzalel, Ki lechatchila kara Hashem lahem shemot, because originally Hashem gives names to things hamorim al shehem nivru lekach. That the name tells us something about what the utility of the item is, or in this case, the person is. Why? Asukim b'melechet hakodesh. That they were specifically created, and that's why they have this name. They were specifically created to be involved in this holy work. Ki Betzalel, who? Betzalel means Shem Tzel El, the shadow of God. Betzalel literally means in the shadow of God. Remez, to hint, Ki hu yivneh Mishkan, he is going to be the one who will be in charge of building the Mishkan, but specifically V'ha'aron. Remember, as I mentioned, it's specifically Betzalel is one who builds the Aron, Asher Bo, which is in the Mishkan. Why? Ki hu mador lishchina. This Aron is the dwelling place, Kiviyachol, of the Shechina. Haba b'tzel korato, which is tzel korato means the shadow of my presence, but we have that phraseology of protection. Tzel korati, where we had kialkein bo b'tzel korati. Lavan is that's what Lavan says to the people. That's why the angels came. They came because they were seeking my protection. So tzel korati means that's where you dwell. It's a secure place. You can come here and you'll be safe. Kemoshe Nemar, as it says, Yoshev v'seiter elyon, v'tzel shadayit lonan. We know as we live and dwell in the shadow of the Almighty. Uketiv ben shaday yolin. And again, it says between the breasts, Hashem will rest. Or in Shir Hashirim, Pershu Chazal. And how do we explain this pasuk of ben shaday yolin? Al shahaya hakadosh baruch hu mitzamtzem shechinato. Kadosh Baruch Hu shrunk his entire Shekhinah, his entire presence, which obviously is greater than the entire universe, but Hashem was mitzamtzem. He knows he limited himself to bein shnei badei ha'aron, between the two poles of the aron. Umibein shnei kruvim asochachim b'chanpeihem al hakaporet, and between the two kruvim who are a canopy, whose wings form a canopy over the kaporet, over the cover of the aron. And the fact that they are so chachim, that they are covering like a roof, eino an inyano hatzel, just like we have schach on sukkah. What is the purpose of the schach? To provide a shadow, shade. So too, schach, when it says Hashem is sitting in the shadow of these kruvim, that the ark and the kaporet and the kruvim are kiviyachol, if it, in an imaginative sense, they are forming the shadow under which God is sitting. So therefore, Betzalel, who makes the Aron, has this name of which alludes to the shadow of God. The Raya, and the proof is Shebechol Maaseh HaMishkan. In all of the work of the Mishkan, it says Vayas. It says that was made. Vayas et Haron. There it says Vayas Betzalel. But Vayas et HaParochet. Vayas et HaKroshim. Every other thing it just says Vayas, and he made. But below Hiskir Betzalel, and Betzalel is not mentioned as an individual involved in the construction, except at the beginning, when it mentions everybody, and in the one case of the Aron Betzalel Aron Vayas Betzalel et HaAron. The Betzalel himself made the Aron. The Chol Zeh Raya, this proves Al Shem HaAron Hu Nikra Betzalel, that because he is the one who makes the ark, that's why he's called Betzalel. That the ark alludes to Hashem. The ark is the presence where Hashem rests his Shekhinah. Betzalel is the architect and the constructor of the Aron, and that's why he gets the name Betzalel. Now the Kli Yakar continues. Why is he called Ben? Why does the Torah say Ben Uri, son of Uri? Al Shem or HaTorah. Uri is my light. Okay, that represents the light of the Torah. Hu yivneh makom l'Torah or, because the Aron, which he's building, represents the light of Torah, represents the Torah. And that's why it's the heart of the Mishkan, because the Torah is the heart of the Jewish people. Ben Chur, why does it mention that he's Ben Chur? Horeh, this is to teach, Shebedin hu lekorvo el hamlacha hakdusha hazot, yoter mizulato, that he by right is the one who is given this unique job more than anyone else. Why? Because Chur, his grandfather, gave his life to try to prevent the people from sinning with the Chet HaEgel, which ultimately which ultimately caused the Chet itself caused the Luchot to be broken. Kiladat Chazal, as the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, that they killed Chur when he tried to stop them from making the Egel. Now, Kli Yakar continues. It says, remember, Betzalel doesn't just say Betzalel ben Uri ben Chur. It says Betzalel ben Uri ben Chur l'mantei Yehuda. Why does it have to specifically emphasize that he's from the tribe of Yehuda? Shenim shal legur aryeh. In Yaakov's blessing to Yehuda, he says Gur aryeh Yehuda. Yehuda is compared to a lion. Mikdash nikra Ariel. In the Beit HaMikdash, specifically the Kodesh Kodashim is called Ariel. Arizeh. Why, like an Ari, like a lion, Sherachav milfanav, whose face and shoulders are wide, Bitzar miacharav, and his back side is narrower. Kach hamishkan, so to the mishkan, the actual structure, Hayarochav milfanav, Bitzar miacharav. It was wider in front of the entrance, and it narrows toward the back. Lo wrote to teach us Shemakom Hashkinah. Why is it that Hashem is in the narrowest point? The Aron is placed in the narrowest point of the Mishkan. To teach us Shemakom Hashchina Eino Tolei Barachvat Yadayim. It has nothing to do with human strength. Ki Hashamayim Ushmei Hashamayim Lo Yichal Kuluhu. Even the entire heavens can't sustain God, can't keep God. Certainly not this little small structure we're building. Al Kain Bachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Shchinato Makom Tsar. That's why Hashem chooses for the Shechina a narrow place or a constricted place. That really Hashem is not constricted and constrained in any place. But really, why is the Mishkan there? Yisrael viter al kivodo. In order to give honor to the Jewish people who are going through all this effort to build the Mishkan, Hashem is willing to forego his honor. To be able to constrict himself to a single place. When we call makom, but again, he didn't want to choose an expansive, large place. He chose a small, constricted place. And that's enough. I've said enough already for people who want to understand what I've said. People understand will understand. People don't. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't explain it any better. Because that's why Betzalel is Betzalel. That's why he is given this job, and that's why it mentions that he's Ben Uri, Ben Chur, Lamate Yehuda. Now, Ohaliav, who is the second in command, is Ohaliav. Shenikra Kach, why was he called Ohaliav? Al Shem, Hu Yivne Ohel Moed. He was the one who was going to build the Ohel, the actual tents. Remember, we said before that Ohaliav seemed to be the one who was in charge of the fabric designers, the weavers, the etc. Liavinu Sheba Shamayim. So Ohaliav can be broken down into two words: Ahale and Av, the tents of the father. Who is the father here? Kleakar wants to say Avinu Sheba Shamayim. Val Shem Zeh Nikra B'Shem Ohaliav. That's why he gets the name Ohaliav. Why Ben Achi Samach? Hisham Makom Smichud Ha'achim, because there is the place of where brothers come together. Dainu Hashchina Im Yisrael, because Hashem comes together with Yisrael. Kemoshe Ne'emar Leman Achai V'Re'ai Adaber Na Shalom Bach. For the sake of my brothers and my friends, Adaber Na Shalom Bach, I will speak to you about Shalom. Uketiv, and another pasuk says, Achoti Rayati, my sister, my beloved. So again, Hashem is our Kiviyachol. Hashem and Am Yisrael are related, and that's where the Shekhinah comes together. That's why Achi Samach, close to my brother. Lamate Dan. Why does it mention that he's from the tribe of Dan? Shenem Shulgam Hu Goraye. Dan is also called the Goraye, but not by Yaakov, but by Moshe in Zod HaBracha. He refers to the tribe of Dan as Dan Goraye, is Anek min Habashan. Al Kain min Haroy Sheyivna Ariel. Therefore, it is also appropriate that he should be building the Mishkan, the tent that that overhangs the Kodesh, which is called Ariel. Veremez and hint Yehuda v'Dan, the true tribes of Yehuda and Dan. What do they hint to? Lishnei Shemotav Yitbarach Hashem Elokim, to the two names of Hashem. What are they? Shem Shel Rachamim, Shem Shel Din. Yehuda has within it the four-letter name of Hashem, also an extra dalet, but it contains the entire name of Hashem. So that alludes to Midat HaRachamim. The word Dan alludes to Midat HaDin. So that these two manifestations of Hashem, of Rachamim, of mercy and justice, are required for Am Yisrael. Asher Shitev HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ubarak Bahem Olam. That Hashem joined these two things, Rachamim and Din, together in order to create the world. Because if we had only Din, the world would not be able to survive, because we human beings would trip up and would be lost. Whereas if we only had Rachamim and we didn't have Din, then it would be a free-for-all. So we need the two of them together for the world to be able to survive. We need a combination of Rachamim and Din. Kach, so too, Mishkan Zeh Hasui Al Tmunat Kol HaOlamot, which this Mishkan, which is supposed to be a model of the entire universe, Nasel Yidei Yehuda, is made through Yehuda, Asher Kol Hashem Shel Rachamim Kalu Bishmo, whose name includes the entire name of Rachamim, Val Yidei Dan, and through the tribe of Dan, Amore Al Midat Hadin, which alludes to the Midat Hadin. Ki Bishnayim Elu Yotzar Hashem Olamo. Therefore, since Hashem used these two attributes to create the universe, Shnayim Elu Nase Al Tmunat HaOlam HaMishkan. And the model for the universe, that the Mishkan is also uses these two things through Al Yidei Shevet Dan Yehuda, through the leaders of these two tribes, their participation of these two individuals from these two tribes. L'kach Nemar, therefore it says, Ru'u Kara Hashem B'Shem. Therefore, Moshe says, see, Hashem has called them appropriate names. So we see that all of the names, all of the Shvatim, all line up to point to the fact that these two are supposed to be the ones constructing the Mishkan. The Sod Zeh Nachonu Barur, and this is a secret that is understood and clear. Ukedei lihidamot mikol v'kol binyan hamishkan el binyan ha'olam, in order to parallel the building of the Mishkan to Hashem's creation of the world, Tziva Moshe, that's why Moshe ultimately has to command the children of Israel, Ish v'shal yasu od melacha, don't bring any more. Enough. We have everything we need to make everything. Don't bring anything else. The kol kach lama, why? What's wrong? Well, why don't we put it aside? We'll have a fund for the next construction project. Why shouldn't we collect more money? The asu avera shayim mevim yosem mikdat tzarach. Did they do an avera by bringing too much? Only fundraising project in history where they ever said don't bring any more. Okay, why? Ela lefi shara Moshe. Shetziur binyan zehu tavnit binyan ha'olam bichlalav. Since Moshe understood that this building, the building of the Mishkan, is a model of the entire universe. The Amru Chazal, and what did Chazal tell us? When Hashem created the universe, it was going and getting wider and wider. It was continuing to grow. Till Hashem looked at the universe and said, enough. And then it stopped growing. So the fact of the matter is, and that's where we get the name Shaddai, Hashem who said die to the universe. That's one opinion where the name Shaddai comes from. Okay, so too, Kach, Shera, Moshe, Shadar Zeholech Mitrachev, Le'ein Tachlit, when Moshe saw that people were bringing stuff that was not going to be able to be used, it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they had enough already. Don't do any more, don't bring any more. So Moshe is alluding by telling people not to bring any more to the fact that this creation of the Mishkan parallels the creation of the universe. And that's why we need these two unique individuals with these special characteristics, the two tribes. All of this is all wrapped up in the concept that the Mishkan is a representation or is a model of the entire universe of Hashem's, and our creation thereof is model of Hashem's creation of the world. And that's why I said that's why the laws of Shabbat, where Hashem rests on Shabbat, come from what we were doing to build the Mishkan, and then we on Shabbat we stopped working on the Mishkan. Okay. Now Torah Moshe. Just for those of you who don't know, Torah Moshe is a Moshe Sofer, 18th century, 19th century. Rav, that's about all I remember from reading the biography of him. But okay. He is going to go through a number of midrashim on the name again of Betzalel and this whole pasuk of Hashem calling Betzalel. Quotes the following Gemara. Betzalel al shem chachmato nikra. Betzalel is called, gets this name because of his wisdom. What does that mean? When Hashem said to Moshe, Lech emor loli Betzalel. Go tell Betzalel, he's in charge of the work. Go tell him. Aseli mishkan aron v'chelim. I want you to make for me. Hashem tells Moshe, I want you to make a mishkan, an aron, and the kelim. Holach Moshe. Moshe went for hafach, and he switched the order around. The Amar lo, he said to Betzalel, I say aron, make an aron, v'chelim u'mishkan, make the aron, all the kelim in the mishkan. Okay, so if we look in parshat Truma, we find that what's listed first? The Aron, the rest of the Kelim, and then the Mishkan. Amar lo Moshe Rabbeinu. So, Amar lo. So Betzalel answers Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu. Minach shel olam. The normal course when you're doing a construction of a house, what do? Adam bone bayit. You don't buy the furniture before you built the house. Why should I, right? I say Kelim v'Aron Mishkan. You're telling me to make all the furniture first and then make the Mishkan? Doesn't make sense. Kelim shani oseh. When I finish making the ark and all the other things, if the building isn't ready, where am I going to put them? So I have nowhere to put them. What good is building the things if they have nowhere to put them? Ella. So what did Betzalel say to Moshe? Ella shema kach amar kodesh baruch hu. Maybe Hashem said, "Asay mishkan aron v'kelim." He wants to make the building first, then the aron and the kelim. Amar lo. So Moshe answers Betzalel, Cain. You're actually right. Shema Betzalel Ella yitzav yadata. Were you standing in God's shadow that you overheard this conversation that He told me that you're first supposed to make the Mishkan? How did you know that? Bikshu Tosfa. Tosfa asked the question. Hello, Kodesh Baruch Hu. Hiktim Gam came Kalim the Mishkan. Hashem also, if we look in Parshat Truma, as we said, what did Hashem start with? The Kalim and then the Mishkan. So why is Betzalel suddenly saying, no, you got to make the Mishkan first? The Teretz keep Parshat Ki Tisaish Kam Mishkan LeKalim Ayin Sham. But if you look, there are a number of different places where it lists all of the things. So firstly, it lists it in Truma. Then it lists it again in Kitisa, when Hashem summarizes all things they have to make. You have to make a Mishkan, you have to Halov, you have to Mikseo, et Kosav, et Krashav, all things it has to make. It starts there with the Mishkan and then goes to the Kelim. Yesh Lomar. Ki Yadua. Now, what is the order that we should be making? Betzalel just gave quickly according to the Midrash. Betzalel says the logical order is you got to build a house first before you can build the Kelim, right? But Yadua ki demalim bekodesh v'lo moridim. We have a general principle that when it comes to holy things, we only go up in sanctity and we try to avoid going down in sanctity. V'zeh bi olam hatachton. And this, however, is in our world. In our world, we try to go up in sanctity rather than go down. Kedei shenelech midargo ledargo, so malo malo ad shnidbak atzmeinu b'kedusha elyon lamala ad ein sof. That we should be able to go step by step, higher and higher, until we can reach come closer to Hashem. How do we come close to Hashem? By going higher and higher, raising the levels of Kedusha. In other words, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to get closer to us, he's got to go the other way around. He's got to go to lower and lower levels of Kedusha until he gets to our world. In order for the Shekhinah to come and rest on the Jewish people, it has to lower itself, kiviyachol, into the world. The Olam Hamasa, to get to the Olam where things happen in this world rather than all the other worlds. Hine ikar kedushat mishkan haya al yedei hakelim hanetunim b'socho ubiprat ha'aron shebo luchot masei Hashem. The primary kedusha in the Mishkan was the Aron and the other kelim, but specifically the Aron, where the luchot, which were created by Hashem. V'Hakadosh Baruch Hu be'emet hiktim kelim asher heim malotim hadola yoter kedoshim. So when Hashem talks about the Mishkan, he talks first about the holier things, the Aron, then the kelim, then the Mishkan, because he's going from highest kedusha to lowest kedusha. V'Yachach Mishkan. So when the Hashem is speaking about this thing, he's got to come down in Kedusha. Moshe Amar Betzalel, and Moshe, when he spoke to Betzalel, Kashamar Hashem Yisparach. So he gave it in the same order Hashem did. The Aron, the other Kalim, and then the Mishkan. Avo Betzalel Hevin, Betzalel understood. Calls Osha Lamata Lamala Tzarech Asiyat Mishkan Tchila Yachach Kelim Lalot B'Kodesh V'Al Zeh Amar Le Betzalel Yita. That's why Moshe says, "Were you in the shadow of God?" And you understood that you had to switch the order around. Yadat Yaduat Silo Shel Davar Hu Mehepach LeHepach Me'Davar Be'Atzmo. When you take a shadow is almost the opposite. It's a mirror image. It's a different image. So you have to switch things around. You go in Adam She'omed Al Haaretz, when a person stands on the ground, his feet are on the ground, his head is in the up and his feet are down. However, when you look at the shadow, the shadow's feet touch the person's feet. However, the head of the shadow is all the way at the other end. So you see, you're going, quote, if you're going downward, it's a mirror image. So the head of the person who's casting the shadow and the head of the shadow are at the two opposite ends. That's why Moshe is in this hint that you were in the shadow. So you understood that you had to switch the order around because Hashem was describing it in the order of highest Kedusha to lowest Kedusha. But when we build it, we have to build it from lowest Kedusha to highest Kedusha because we want to go up in levels of Kedusha. So that's one aspect of why he has this phrase of Betzalel and Betzalel's name. Okay, second thing that the Torah Moshe says. Another Gemara. Brachon Nun Hey. Ita Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. Hashem tells Moshe, Lech Amor Yisrael, I want you to go ask the Jewish people, Im Hagun Lifnechem Betzalel, if they will accept Betzalel as their person to build the Mishkan. Nirali, It appears to me, the Torah Moshe says, that he asked them as if this choice, as if this was a real election. They have the choice. They can say yes or no. They have a real vote in this. Why? What difference does it make? If Hashem already picked him, why? What does it mean that Bnei Yisrael have a choice? In reality, everybody could have done the work. The Oz, if they accept Betzalel, Betzalel shlucham kamosam. If they accept him, then he can be their messenger. And we know that a person's messenger who does something is as if he himself is doing it. Shliach shlucho kamoto. So there's certain mitzvot that you can appoint a messenger to do for you. Example, Brit Milah. Who's the obligation to perform a Brit Milah? The father. What if the father's not a Moel and he doesn't want to do the Brit Milah? What does he do? He appoints a Moel as his shliach. Why, if you go to most Britim, the Moel will and should ask the father, okay, are you appointing me the shliach to be the one to perform the Brit Milah? Similarly here, if the Jewish people are the ones who are supposed to be building the Mishkan, then they're obligated, then they can appoint Betzalel. Masha Eintain, however, if Hashem decided that only Betzalel can do it, nobody else, that says that only Betzalel can do the work. Nobody else can do it. So the rest of the Jewish people can't even do this. So the other Jewish people couldn't have appointed him as their messenger. Because we know that somebody who's not commanded to do something can't appoint a messenger to do it for them, because there's no involvement. In that case, Betzalel would have only been the representative of Hashem. He would have been building it on behalf of Hashem and not on behalf of Am Yisrael. Al Kain, therefore, Amaru Kara Hashem. Therefore, Moshe says, see, Hashem would like him to be, he's given him, but he wants you to accept him so that Perusho is what Moshe meant to say. See for yourself if he is acceptable to be your messenger. So it was as if it was their choice, and they could therefore appoint him as a messenger. Therefore, we'll fill the Asu. All of Klal Yisrael will make the Mishkan. Shekol Yisrael Asuoto. If Betzalel is the only one making it, and he doesn't represent Am Yisrael, then he made it. It's his. It's not all of Am Yisrael, and therefore Moshe says, no, you have to accept him, and that's another reason why is Bru Kara Hashem Betzalel. Okay, we're going to go one more Torah again from the Torah Moshe. One more thing. He says the following: Darshu Chazal again, Baran Brachot, same thing. Betzalel Hayitav Yadat. He named it parshat Truma. He's going to go through again the whole thing. Hiktim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Aron B'Shulchan U'Menorah L'Mishkan. Shemo Be'emet Hikshu Tosfot Sham. In parshat Truma, Hashem goes Aron, other Kalim, and then Mishkan. The Amnam Be'Parshat Kiti Samar Kadosh Baruch Hu Rei Kawati B'Shem Betzalel. In the chapter, in this parshat, it says Shamikti Mishkan LeKalim. It says the Mishkan, the Kalim, the Aron, opposite order. Mishum D'Yesh Lomar. Betzalel's question is, if I make the kalim first, where am I going to put him? Is not a problem. Why? So what Moshe wants to say is, what do you mean you're going to make the kalim first, and where are you going to put him? If we look at the way the work was done, there were lots of people. It wasn't just one person doing it all. So at the same time that Betzalel is making the furniture, somebody else is making the building. There's another group, a whole group of people working. And all of these things were intricate, detailed, especially the kalim. The kalim required a lot of work. The shulchan, the menorah, they all had very fine, detailed work that had to be prepared. It wasn't just, okay, 5 minutes, we'll put it together and it's done. Im kain, dayu im yigmu b'shaveh, im orge yiriot asiyat hakoshim. It would be perfect that they would take all this time to fashion the furniture. Would take the same amount of time would take them to fashion the building. boom, everything will be ready on time. What a perfect PERT chart. When you have two lines going together, they both end at the same time. That works perfectly. If you're a project manager, that's like the best of all worlds. Everything comes together and nothing interferes with. It's not that this has to wait and there's no bottlenecks. Everything is proceeding in parallel. That's perfect. So what's his question? Where am I going to put it? By the time you finish making them, the building will be done. No problem. But here's the problem. Betzalel was full of wisdom and understanding and knowledge. What does that mean? Betzalel knew the secret of creation. He knew how all letters of the Torah work together perfectly and how to use them to mystically create things at a rather amazing rate. It says already that Ohaliav was helping him with some of the work. Doesn't mention Chachma Tfuna V'dat except with Betzalel, not Ohaliav, not the Chacham Lev. They didn't have all these other gifts. Therefore, B'dibur v'amira v'kavanat tziruf shemot naseh kelim ha'ela meheira. Because Betzalel knew all these mystical secrets, he was able to make the kelim very, very quickly. So that's why al karchach. That's why shaper kama hechnisam. He says, wait a minute. If I start now at the same timeline and I do it, only I do it, I'm going to get it done much quicker because I'm going to do it mystically and we're going to get things done very quickly. So Moshe Rabbeinu So Hashem asked Moshe, is Betzalel okay? Moshe Rabbeinu asked Yisrael, is he okay? If they had said, nah, we don't want Betzalel to lead this project, he's not the right guy to do it, pick somebody else. Then Hashem would have said, okay, you want somebody else, we'll pick somebody else. Then they would have had to do it in real work, in real time. They wouldn't have had this extra speed. Only Betzalel had this extra zechus of knowing all the secrets so he could make things quickly and to specification immediately. Therefore, when we get to parshat Truma, Hashem has to say the Aaron and Kalim have to go first because timeline requires them to get started. If you don't start them right away, they won't be finished on time if everybody's doing them by natural ways. Maybe they won't accept Betzalel, and therefore they're going to have to do it the long way. If that's the case, then the timeline will be perfect. They'll be finished at the same time everything else is finished. After Hashem told Moshe, I want Betzalel to lead this. Moshe, the Gam Yisrael, and Moshe and Yisrael all accepted him. Am Yisrael said to Moshe, hey, if he's okay, but Hashem says he's okay, you say he's okay, we're going to say he's not okay? What kind of not? What do you mean? Of course he's okay. And that's why in the parshat Kitisa, we have the opposite order switched. So the Mishkan and the Kelim, Mishkan has to come first because it has to be built before Betzalel can quickly finish everything else. And therefore, since he's going to be using Chachmat, to finish everything in super time, therefore he has to they have to get a head start, and that's why the order is again switched. All sorts of interesting thoughts in terms of the order, in terms of these two individuals. But I want to end with one quick thought. It's interesting because we read before the Klei Yakar says the word Ohaliav is related to the Ohel of Avinu Sheba Shamayim. I want to give one thing. I haven't been able to find in any of the Parshanim, but this to me seems to be a very, very appropriate name for Ohaliav. Ohaliav, to me, it's Ohaliav, is the Ohel of Av. Who is the Av? Avram Avinu. Because if we think about it, the Mishkan is representative of the tent of Avram Avinu. And how do we know that? We know that from a Rashi that's quoted in the end of Parshat Chayesara. When Rivka comes and when Yitzchak installs Rivka in her tent, it tells us that Nase Dugmat Sarimo, that Rivka is comparable to Sarah. And what is that? There were three things. When Sarah was alive, Ner daluk me'erev Shabbos le'er Shabbos. There was always a candle burning in the house. Ubracha metzuya be'isa. There was always a blessing formed in the bread. The anan kashur al oil. There was always a tent, a cloud over the tent. Umishamet. And when Sarah leaves, those things go. And when Rabbi Rivka comes, they return. What do those three things represent in the Mishkan? Ner daluk. Bracha metzuya be'isa. Of course, the shulchan where we had the bread, and the anan kashur al oil represents the anan from the ketoret. So we see that in reality, the Mishkan and this brought down other places. I just brought this very quick because I said let's talk about this for the last 2 minutes. The Mishkan represents the tent of Avram Avinu also in many midrashim. And the purpose of the Mishkan, just like the purpose of the tent of Avram Avinu and the tent that we all live in our house, in our homes, and our shuls and our lives, should be very simply to bring the presence of Hashem down to this earth so that we can experience Hashem, that we don't live our lives in a way that Hashem feels he has to hide himself from our presence. So when we can see Hashem, the world is a much different place. And we hope and pray that we will learn these lessons from the Mishkan to try to bring ourselves to a level where we can help bring Hashem back to this world so we can be zocher to Gula Shlem Meher V'Yameinu. Thank you all. I hope this was good. I hope you enjoyed and learned something. And at this point, I open up for questions, comments, and or feedback. Stan,
Yes.
1 minute, Rita. Hold on. Rita, hold on a second. Stan, go ahead. Sorry.
At the beginning of the year,
Yes.
that Sal was a metal worker. One of the
Smith, yes. He was a goldsmith, silversmith, etc.
as he also seems to have been a master woodworker.
Yeah, no. Okay. Stan's question was, we mentioned beginning specifically that Betzalel is an expert smith in terms of goldsmith, coppersmith, silversmith. And what about woodworking? If I'm not mistaken, it does. We did. So I said that also, right? Betzalel, it says Betzalel. If you mention Betzalel, it says Lachshov Machshavot B'Charoshet Evan L'Malot B'Charoshet Eitz. There, Charoshet Eitz. There it is. Okay, no, it's okay. But yes, he was also carpentry work. Okay. Oh, I don't put that up. I just wrote it on my woodwork. Okay, Rita, you had a question.
Yes. And at the Kotel, they have a place where they're building the vessels that go into the Mishkan.
Yes.
And in relationship to what he's saying, do you build the vessels first? Is that proper? Or is it because the third Beit HaMikdash is supposed to be that Hashem will build it and we should have everything ready so it's fast?
That's a great question. I will tell you firstly that Machon HaMikdash is very actively involved in building or making the kelim that could potentially be used in the Beit HaMikdash. But it's interesting because whenever we talk about the Mikdash, we look to past precedents to see what was done. And in general, again, and I think that the key is that the timelines sort of go parallel, that you're supposed to be building the building the same time you're building the kelim. At least that seems to be one opinion here. However, having said that, when the returnees came back from Bavel, they brought some of the kelim from the first Beit HaMikdash back with them, according to some opinions and some of the psukim. So that clearly that preceded the building of the building. What will happen in the third Beit HaMikdash? Despite the fact that there's a midrash that says the building will come down from Shemayim built and ready to go, I still believe that as always, human input is required. I think that's one of the key components that we learn from the Mishkan, that we learn from Shlomo's building the Beit HaMikdash, that we learn from our daily activities, that everything we want to accomplish, Hashem generally does not just miraculously bring things down ready to go on a silver platter. We have to give our input. So in this case, our input certainly would be involved. As I said, the articles they're making are more along the lines of all the auxiliary things that they made. They aren't, I don't know that they're building a table that will ultimately be able to be used. Or, I mean, there's a dugma of the menorah I know they have on the steps going down to the kotel. But the whole concept of what they're building It's the trumpets or the pitchers or the forks, knives. Well, they didn't have knives, but they had forks and other utensils. Those are all going to be built by humans, and whether they precede the building of is not what the focus here is. The focus here is the furnishings. In other words, the ark. Now, the ark is not. We're not going to make a new ark. The ark is going to be the ark that was there. There is only one ark. It's never been. It can't be duplicated because inside it have to be luchot. There are no duplicate luchot. I mean, there's duplicate, but they're both in there. So from that perspective, that's not the same as the kalim I think that they're making, which are more along the lines of the auxiliary stuff that they're primarily preparing. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to say anything for them. Okay, any other questions or comments before we go? Okay, thank you all. Have a good evening, a good rest of the week, a Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you all next week.